Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and for those of you who have come to the previous ones, this will sound a little bit like a broken record. When we review the data, we're going to see that our expanded violent crimes unit continues to perform at a very high level, especially compared to national peers. We've been able to recruit and retain our officers, and so we're at full staff levels for the first time, and probably the highest level for in my mayorship. So I think the other thing that's going to be a little bit new in today's presentation is that the shootings year to date are significantly lower than they've been throughout the past several years. And I think it is no coincidence that we are fully staffed for the first time in a number of years, and crime is lower today than it's been in a number of years. And so we've seen, we've talked about this in the past, especially with conversations about policing and the proper funding over the past several years. If you look at the studies, if you look at peer-reviewed research, there are a lot of different things that can drive, and of course there are things outside, of the immediate control of the police department. But other than those macro factors, the one thing that's been proven to address crime is the number of officers and making sure our officers are able to be proactive out on the street. So what it means to have a fully staffed police department, it means we can start enforcing traffic violations again, and we'll speak to that in a moment. It means that we have the detectives to allocate to the various caseloads that we have. It means that we have patrol officers that are not just running from call to call, but can make sure to be a little more proactive and make sure to stay in some of the hot spots that we know are driving problems. So all of these things go into play, and but the number of officers is a big factor. I don't think we can minimize that, and it's important for folks to remember that officers are part of making sure our neighborhoods are safe and our community is safe. And so with that, I'll turn it over to the Chief for a couple of announcements.
Oh, yeah. Chief Skibins is going to probably go into some further detail. I know more than probably go into further detail when it comes to announcement. Some of you may have heard it last night. I kind of hinted to it or alluded to it at the council meeting last night in our budget with the community resource officers. And Dan will give some updates on our flock cameras and things of that nature when it comes. We'll have further announcements here shortly within the next few upcoming weeks about an expansion of our camera project. So I think, Ashley, we can just get into the nuts and bolts right now. Some of the further announcements here. Obviously, if you haven't known or you haven't recognized that the schools are back in session, contrary to comments that have been put on Facebook, social media, whatever, we do have cops in school zones, incoming and outgoing, meaning when they're going to school and coming from school, we are there in those school zones, out on top of or outside of the school resource officers. Just one thing we want people to remember, those flashing stop signs on the school buses are there for a reason. They do have cameras on them. Just be aware, and look, it's very simple. Don't rush the bus. There's kids at life's at stake here. Announcement: we do have a new school resource officer. Hopefully, you paid attention to our Facebook and other social media posts. Georgia Wells is our newest school resource officer. We are actually in the process right now of doing interviews for another school resource officer. Britton Pratt is still here. She leaves September 2nd, so she's been essentially teaching the ins and outs of the SRO ship to Georgia. So they've been running well together, but we will have yet another replacement. So we have SROs in all the high schools, and they also split up the middle schools. Just you see some of the pictures here. I don't know, my head may be in the way, but we had our successful out of school and back to school cookouts. It was well attended. We ran out of everything, and so that is a good thing. More importantly, I think we've given out more high fives than any time in history during those two events. Next is we have our Citizens Police Academy currently going on. It started August 8th. That's Tuesday nights. It started at 6 p.m. We're going to be running a second program come next year, so we'll be doing spring and fall of next year. There's information on here. We put it out on our social media. And some of the things here in the corner are what we do, that the hands-on things, I think is an overwhelming success. A lot of people I heard from yesterday and prior to that, well, they love Lieutenant Mueller's and Captain Biggs' presentation, but they really enjoyed the real-time crime center, seeing some of the stuff and not really realizing you hear about it, but when you get to see it, it's a whole different ball game. So with that, I think we are at Chief Skibins.
Yep, I'll be covering the next few slides as they pertain to recruitment and hiring, one of the divisions that I oversee. And up first, we have prospect days. We've seen great success from our prospect days. As you can see behind me, this will be our sixth prospect days. As a reminder, this is a process that starts off the hiring to become a South Bend police officer. 5 out of 8 steps are covered in one day. We are still the only department we know of in this area that has a prospect day to this level. Other departments may run 1 or 2 sessions of their hiring process, maybe even up to 3. We're completing 5 all in one day and not taking away from those processes. They are still the same. You still have to complete all the standard requirements that you did before we were running prospect days in these 5 sessions that we host on the prospect day. That's going to be October 7th. We're looking forward to it. We had roughly 60 individuals show up at our last prospect day. We're expecting the same. We're in a good place now, where before, when we were hurting for staffing numbers, where we're looking to hire everyone that passes. We need as many officers as we can get. Now we can be even more picky and choosy. We're looking for about 5 individuals from this prospect day to send to the academy in January. We have a few left over from our last prospect day that will join them so that we can put 10 through the academy starting in January of 2024. Moving on, you'll see some numbers on the next slide. Hiring and recruitment for this year sits at 9 individuals hired. 15 have left through resignations or retirement. Next week, we will see 4 more sworn on to add to that number of 9. And on September 20th, we will add 2 more officers that will be sworn on. So that number from 9 will go up by 6. We are right now currently at 244. With 6 more, we would be at 250. However, we have 3 officers retiring in the month of September. They will be off the books. So that will put us back down to 247. I have 1 individual attending the academy right now. So if all goes as expected, we will close out the year roughly at 248. Still recruiting laterals from other departments. We just hired a female lateral from a nearby department last week. So we'll continue to do that throughout the year. So projecting 248, we could be more, and you never know about retirements, we could be less, but hopeful that we'll see 248 to close out the year.
You want to speak to the budgeted number next year?
Yes, we presented last night to council, and the request from the police department, approved by the mayor's office, going over staffing levels and where we need to be, is 252. So if approved by council, we'll be able to get to 252. And oftentimes we go over what we're budgeted for, just like we are going over currently right now, because of retirements. And because that training process, some individuals get washed out, so we don't know what our end result is going to be. After they complete starting in 2024, 15-week academy, it's getting bumped up. They then have to go through a post-basic training where they learn about our technologies here, how to log in, how to type reports. It's certain areas that our department does slightly differently from what the academy teaches. They learn some of those things that are more for urban policing. And so sometimes individuals don't make it through FTO, which takes about 12 weeks after that post-basic portion of their training. So there's approximately 8 months of training that goes into an officer after they're hired. They don't get sworn in until they graduate from the academy. So we do oftentimes go over that staffing number. We could potentially do that in 2024 by going over the 252 if it's approved. Moving into the next slide. This shows our diversity makeup for the police department. We are happy to see that we have gone up in 1 category. However, we've gone slightly down in 2 of those categories. This remains a priority for our police department to continue to increase in these areas. And as I stated before, now that we can be even more picky-choosy in what comes out of our prospect days, who we're looking to hire, we anticipate these numbers going back to where they were and growing from there.
I think it's on me, Ashley, now.
Yes. Yep.
So, as you can see by that slide and your handouts, it's pretty self-explanatory, but just to give you some percentages, the gun violence incidents themselves have gone down by 24%. The criminal assault shooting victims have gone down 44%, and the illicit guns that have been recovered or removed has gone down by 27%, or actually increased by 27%. So the factual numbers are there. 533 total gun violence incidents, 50 victims compared to 89 last year, and then 461 guns this year, and the same time was 325 last year. Those were a couple of the questions that the council had asked about yesterday, all part of the budget process. And like the mayor had said, it is no coincidence. You have more officers, we're available to do more things, and especially be out there. Deterrence, first and foremost. We want voluntary compliance. We do not want to be punitive, but if we are pushed to that level, then you can guarantee we're going to be punitive by putting somebody in handcuffs or writing a ticket or impounding a vehicle. We do not want to have to do that. So the voluntary compliance is the most important part of everything. People want and should be good, decent human beings, and we would love to have these numbers at zero. That is the ultimate goal, as my last breath would be, to have zero across the board. The next slide shows the gun violence breakdown. Again, I won't go through every single one of those, but overall there's a 41% decrease in gun violence over the last 4 years. You can see the areas that are on the hotspot maps there where they are. Those are our focused deterrence areas that we use our data, our analytics, our evidence, our statements, our proof positive that incidents have occurred there, and that's where we are deploying our resources and technologies and everything else in those areas. And Dan will get into that a little bit later about some of the successes we've had with those technologies. And we'll come back later if you have questions about this.
All right, the next slide is specific to death investigations, and so this, while it's a Q2 update, this will be year to date. So we're going October 2021 through August 2023. We have a total of 58 death investigations. Of those 58, 39 have been murder investigations, with 9 remaining open and active. With 39 investigations, we have a total of 42 murder victims. The other 19 investigations would be a combination of sudden death cases or cases that are justified homicides or reckless homicides, all of which of those 19 are resolved and none of which are open. Moving into the next slide, the Michiana Crime Stoppers update for Q2. We completed our geofencing campaign. There was 3 separate campaigns for the months of April, May, and June. Each one of those campaigns saw 40,000 plus impressions in a 1 mile radius around each of the crime scenes. And although none of the 3 cases were actually solved yet, we did see an increase in overall tips for Q2, which was about a 10% increase from Q1. So we did see overall tips coming in through Crime Stoppers go up for Q2. We also had 2 months that were, one of which was a record-breaking month of March, and then closely followed by May. So for March, we had a total of 54 cases that were closed out, 34 arrests, and over $10,000 in rewards was authorized. And May was right behind it with 50 cases, 34 arrests, and $9,900 in rewards authorized. And a total of $16,000 in narcotics were recovered due to tips. And as a reminder, we have our Victory Over Violence pilot program that still is continuing. That's an automatic $1,000 for a $1,000 reward for a tip that leads to the arrest or solving of a felony crime involving a firearm. And since we implemented that program, we've had 8 rewards authorized and a total of 11 firearms, and that's as of the end of July.
And we are back to me for the next slide. This is a new slide that we've incorporated into our quarterly public safety announcement. You haven't seen this one before. I'm going to talk traffic enforcement here momentarily, but first I want to talk about staffing and how that staffing has affected traffic enforcement for our police department. Over 2020, 2021, and 2022, we averaged about 215 to 220 officers during that time period. We had to downsize in every area of the police department, from the detective bureau to the strategic focus unit, even at some points considering pulling SROs, as we fell to 209 officers at one point about a year and a half ago. So our next steps were considering some of the lower level calls we may not be able to answer because we didn't have the staffing on the shifts. We were at minimum staffing on shifts to include supervision on those shifts. So one of the first things we did, January and February, our staffing came back up to levels that we could start backfill. That backfill started with supervisors and officers being assigned to the patrol division. We now have excess officers assigned to those patrol divisions that we can give additional assignments to. And then also backfilling SFU and backfilling the detective bureau. Now that those are backfilled, we are able to look at other areas that we need to enhance and improve upon. Our relationship-based policing model, also known as community-oriented policing, we are going to utilize community resource officers to fulfill some of those goals that we have within that strategy. So like SROs, they'll be out in the community doing work like SROs are doing in schools. Quality of life issues that our community has spoken out about, such as traffic enforcement, drug houses, just to name the two most important ones and priorities that we have heard from community leaders, council members, CAG meetings, community action group meetings, neighborhood association meetings. Those are the top two things that come up every time. We've already started to implement some of these things, and this breakdown shows you the quarters. It's not year to date. I did that specifically because we were starting backfill in quarter one. Quarter two, we had that backfill completed with supervision on shifts and more officers on shifts. We started with the night shift. The night shift got staffed first, and they utilized their resources to have officers out doing traffic enforcement, dangerous driving details. It started first on Fridays and Saturdays, and then they increased that to other days throughout the week. The impact that had on minimizing traffic accidents that were serious and Part 1 crimes in those areas, we saw immediately in our statistics, as the chief talked about as he went through Part 1 crimes and violent crimes. We saw a reduction in those areas, an immediate impact from doing more traffic enforcement, so it affects more than just dangerous driving. Feeding off of that, we now have enough on each of the other two shifts. Day shift is 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., afternoon shift is 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. In July, the chief mandated that they will have 2 officers assigned to traffic. That will be their assignment to do traffic enforcement on the shift level. So rather than having a traffic unit, we now have traffic units on all of our patrol shifts. 2 officers on each shift for 24 hours a day, starting in July, to impact traffic safety complaints that we are receiving from the community. As you can see, a 40% increase just in looking at second quarter that ended in June. We anticipate seeing that to continue to increase now that we have designated officers assigned to do traffic enforcement on the shift level. The CROs are an important piece with this because they'll be going to all the community meetings. They'll be the first phone call that our council members will make. Rather than calling the chief when there's quality of life issues in their districts, they can contact our CROs. Our CROs will work with patrol. They will work with SFU, who houses our drug unit, and we will be enhancing our drug unit by adding another drug investigator. So all of our staffing improvements go towards things such as quality of life issues, utilizing CROs, and having traffic units on shifts.
I think as a disclaimer, though, I don't mind the council member still calling me, but 9-to-1 ratio doesn't work out so well. So a 9-to-3 is a little bit better, or maybe even throw in the 9-to-4 ratio because they can still include me.
It's not man to man, but it's zone coverage.
Yeah,
right?
Pretty, exactly, zone coverage for the, a football analogy there, or it could be basketball technically. One thing I just want to reiterate, and I know it's a little footnote there, those are traffic violations only. Those are something that officers witness. It's not like I'm responding to a call and a red Camaro took off from this call, whatever that call may have been. And please, let's vet some of those photos before you. So we just want to make sure that it's not that red Camaro leaving that call, that traffic stop occurs, and then we're counting that into a traffic violation. Although there could be, it's irrelevant when it comes to this analysis, these statistics. Those are traffic stops that an officer witnessed, whether it's running a stop sign, red light, speeding, whatever the case may be. With the traffic calming measures that we currently have in place, and maybe some more, I know the mayor has, there's pros and cons with the traffic calming measures, but we are an enhancement to those measures, and vice versa. So we cannot be the entire city all at one time, but with those traffic calming measures and us, that's our goal too, is the traffic calm. Again, voluntary compliance, as Dan said. When it comes to the midnight shift, that's why we didn't tell you about it. We wanted to see how it was going to work out, and we also have plan B's and C's that will be in effect should this not work. But so far it has, and we're hoping that continues. And the voluntary compliance does occur by people going, you know what, I really don't want to get stopped, so I'm not going to speed or run red lights. That would be a great goal to have.
Our next slide is a Sync South Bend update, and we have the mayor listed as covering it, but I can start us off if you'd like.
Sure, go ahead.
We launched Sync South Bend a few months ago, and it was a way for residents and businesses to partner with the South Bend Police Department, a way for them to easily register their cameras. And as you can see, our numbers have climbed up to 882 cameras, which is, I'm not sure what it was last time around. I don't know if you remember, Ashley, but it's significantly increased over the last few months. So 254 of those are integrated. And as part of the integration with our real-time crime center, that gives access to our real-time crime center if an incident occurs, a call for service, to utilize those cameras and help investigate for officers out in the field. Our officers would also have access to that from their computers inside their vehicle. That's if a call for service goes out in the area where those cameras are integrated. Now the city is launching our security assessments. So these will be free to businesses who potentially want to integrate. Coming in the not too distant future, they'll be able to apply for grants, but the first step is to go through the security assessment. Again, those are free, and you can see the link that's listed at the bottom of the slide. Once that assessment is complete, then they are able to apply for the grants that are coming in the future. If their system needs updated, then the city can help with funding for that, for additional cameras or for internet speeds to get them up to the speeds necessary to integrate with our real-time crime center. Anything I missed, Mayor?
I don't have much to add other than we know the business community is eager to partner with us on this project, and in the very near future we'll have more information on the long-awaited incentive program to help get businesses on board.
And we just had 8 more cameras added, so now we're at 890 since this morning. It's always growing.
All right, strategies and programs. One of those utilized as part of our real-time crime center and is proven to be have a great impact on our investigations would be license plate readers. We utilize Flock license plate readers. I've gone over the what, who, and how, so I won't bore you with some of that. I can answer questions afterwards if you have any further about what license plate readers are. I'll jump to the stats from the case assists. Just this year we have 39. An important category for us would be ag assaults. Many of those are shootings and homicides. So just this year, license plate readers have helped our investigators with 7 cases. That is lead information only. That does not develop a suspect. That just gives our investigators lead information to investigate further. We are over 120 since we launched license plate readers. To close out last year, we were at 80 some in 2022 when we launched Flock cameras. And so the impact has been great for us there. The next strategy that we utilize is ShotSpotter Connect. As a reminder, I know that we've gone over the what, who, and how, but I'll just quickly go over some of the stuff on this. This is a technology that provides us resource deployment that is unbiased. It is computer algorithms based on reports that are filed. It is reran every 24 hours, and it dictates areas that we call missions for officers to spend time in. The officers have to spend during their shift 45 minutes in a mission to complete it. That's in 15-minute intervals, so they can't spend 45 minutes all at once during their 8-hour shift. They have to go and come back, and they answer calls in the meantime. Then they go back to these mission areas where either violence has occurred or there's been a spree of property crimes that has occurred. ShotSpotter Connect deploys those resources out in the field. The next slide, I think, gives us, yes, it does. It gives us a breakdown of how many missions we have per day. There's 72, and how many missions we've had so far this year. This is year to date, and we've climbed all the way up to 98% completion, which is fantastic for us, starting off in the upper 60s to lower 70%. So the buy-in and the mandates that we have from supervisors to complete these missions have been successful so far.
All right, and then before we turn it over to questions, we always like to wrap these presentations up with a couple events that we have coming up. So you can see here we've got a couple things on the calendar where the police department met with many other departments in the city are excited about Fusion Fest, which will be in September, and you guys will be hearing much more about that, but that is on our calendar. We will have involvement with that as well. Our monthly community stat meetings are also continuing, and I know a lot of you media come to that every month, so we appreciate that. That's the second Wednesday of the month. With the staffing improvements, when we had the Citizens Police Academy last year, we had to put a pause on those just due to the strain of resources, but now that we're back up, we're able to support our academy and those monthly meetings, so that's great that we are able to continue those. As we mentioned, Prospect Day coming up in October, and the applications for that are due October 2nd. And then one of our favorite events and a community favorite, Cops and Goblins, we have established a date for that. That is going to be October 24th, which is 2 months from today. So we will release more information about that after Labor Day in terms of where to pick up free tickets and also for vendors to be able to secure a seat with that. So that will be at Four Winds Field like it has been the last several years, and we are looking forward to welcoming thousands of kids and their families and their costumes and candy, and it's a great night. It's going to be on a Tuesday. So with that, we will open it up to questions.
I guess I'll start. I think the number that caught a lot of our eyes was the shooting stats going down in terms of victims for this year. I want to address Chief. James just mentioned in his opening remarks he feels that there's a strong correlation between the number of officers on the force and those numbers coming down. Just wanted to get your thoughts. Do you agree with that? Are there other causes? Is there anything or a number of things that you would see and you would point to as for why the numbers appear to be, or why the numbers are down? Yeah,
so it's like, how do you measure the effectiveness of deterrence? Right, there's no way you could possibly, nobody's come up with the analytics to be able to do that. But that's why I feel the same as the mayor does. It's not a coincidence when you have more, there's more visibility, that's more of a deterrence factor. And, quite frankly, what we do, especially like when the mayor talks about it or Dan talked about the mission areas, we're there to keep the bullies out of the playground. Everybody's welcome to play, but you can't be a bully when you do it. Like, that is literally what we're trying to do, and I think that has a profound effect. Also, I think more and more the community is fed up with the violence. You heard Kayla when she said the increase in tips and things like that, so people are beginning to more and more call and are tired of this happening. If anybody saw the council meeting last night, at least 2 of the council members raised grave concerns that they had in their neighborhoods that they experienced themselves personally. And one was the clerk, and she did. So people are tired of what's happening. They are calling us, for that help. And I think that has now with technology and all the other stuff that we've incorporated, that has been a huge help and success. I'm not going to be celebratory. I won't celebrate that. We have 50 people, right? 50 people that were shot this year, criminal assault shootings, and again, that's 50 above zero, and that's not acceptable. We need to get that number to 0, but great question.
And I want to give, officers are, we talked about peer-reviewed research. That's one thing that's proven, officers. So is some of this hotspot, deploying our resources as efficiently as possible to places that they can be, each officer can be more effective in deterring crime. So those are also, there's a little more mixed data on that, but that's another strategy that's proven. And we're not trying to say that this is the only thing, but in the immediate sense, when you talk about fluctuations, in the immediate sense, this is one. Obviously, root causes of crime continue to be the things we have to focus on if we want to get the numbers down even further. Because, I mean, if you look at where we are, and we don't want to, we're not out here celebrating where we are because it's still a lot of shootings and shooting victims. And last year we saw the second half of the year was more violent than the first half of the year. But this is still comparing apples to apples to last year. So, we're still in a good spot, but relative to last year. But if you look at the history of this over the past, 10, 15 years, there was a spike in 18 and 19, if you recall that. And then the pandemic came, and the spikes continued, not just here, across the country. Some of those pandemic-related spikes have been falling, so we saw that last year, and we've been seeing that. So there's a combination of things coming together. But the fact that we're able to do the things that we haven't been able to do in a long time, we know are impactful. We know the judicial system is doing what they need to do to make or keep violent offenders off the streets. That helps. If you leave we know some violent offenders, and if we can't get them off the streets, they keep committing violent crimes. So the ability to get violent offenders off the streets is also a critical factor as well. But all of these pieces come together, and we still have a lot of work left to do.
Yeah, I think even with that, to even recap, so a simple traffic stop, an officer making a traffic stop, somebody's speeding, blowing, which irritates people, right? Even angers them. There could be a confrontation. We know that's happened here and everywhere else that turns into a shooting. But what amazes me after my 36 year of doing this is we have patrol officers. I just talked to Captain Biggs about this morning. We have patrol officers that nobody ever would have thought in the history, including me, of the police department, that patrol officers would be doing search warrants. So search warrants then morphs into recovery of whatever it may be, drugs, narcotics, etc. Getting that person out of that situation, whatever it is, by whatever means, legal and legitimate. Going to the Detective Bureau, who do a phenomenal job, and no matter what they investigate, all the way up through the prosecutor, through the judicial system, etc. Those gears have been missing teeth for a while. The teeth are there, maybe not catching all the time, but I think we're making great strides to have all those gears mesh.
Chief, I know you said that you're not necessarily going to be doing any celebrating, but based off these numbers, there's quite a few positives. Like I said, I know you're not celebrating, but what stat on there makes you say, all right, obviously things are improving in areas?
Well, all of them. I mean, any time that you see those crime numbers, Part 1 crimes have been down actually the last almost 2 years now, except for a month or two here and there. But overall, it's right around a 6% decrease in Part 1 crimes. And I'm doing the math in the top of my head, trying to remember all the monthly Board of Safety meetings where those are presented. So, when you have that is celebratory if you're looking at it from an analytical or an administrative point of view. But to me and to us, there is no cause for celebration there. We never accept good enough. There's no way there ever should be. Everybody here, I can tell you, strives to do their job, to not have to do their job. Hopefully that made sense. It does to me, and it does to them. And when they tell it to me, it makes perfect sense to me. That's overall is what they're trying to do is work themselves out of work.
On that same token, Mayor Mueller, obviously the reduction of crime is and always will be such a big emphasis for you. When you're looking at these numbers, I know there's areas for improvement, but obviously there's areas that are positive. When you look at these numbers, what do you see that, I guess, similar to what I asked Chief Ruszkowski, what makes you say, okay, something that we are doing is trending in the right direction?
Well, I mean, we've put a lot of focus on public safety. It's been a top priority of my administration since day one in 2020 throughout the pandemic. And it's everything we've done during the past few years, whether it's increasing the compensation for our officers so we could be competitive and get our staffing levels back to where they need to be, whether it's working with the community on our use of force policies and other things to build trust with community members so that they trust our officers and they come to us knowing that we're here to help and we're here to keep our neighborhood safe. So I would say, it's hard, as Chief said, this is one that's hard to pinpoint exactly, which piece, is bringing which part of the reduction, or what would it be in an alternative universe where we didn't do these things. Those are hard to do, but we can rely on what we know from peer-reviewed research, that they do rigorous data analysis across the country about what approaches are effective, and we've been following the data on those, whether it's number of officers, whether it's the Shot Spotter Connect, and whether it's best practices in community policing. All of those things are what I think, in my belief, and you could say I'm biased as mayor of South Bend, but I believe we have the best police department in the country. I can't point to a police department right now that's doing better, and if you do, I'd be happy to discuss that with you.
Sorry, go ahead, Maria.
Does CRO mean community resource officer?
Yes, it does.
And are those officers already, out there doing that?
We're interviewing for 2 positions next week.
Is it cheaper shift or?
We currently have 1 individual who does nuisance properties. With this new role, we'll change his title, and he'll be one of the community resource officers.
So would that be 3 or 2?
It'll be 3 total.
Thanks. The nuances.
And would those all be sworn officers who are
Yes.
handling that? Gotcha.
For any of the numbers that are not trending in the right direction, that have increased or in some cases decreased, what is being done to address those so that they can be improved, for anyone who wants to chime in?
You got to be more specific on that. Like, which one are you referring to?
A specific one.
Like-
Say.
Yeah, the only numbers, at the numbers that we go into in the quarterly updates are some of the recruitment numbers, and I think Chief Skibins mentioned that that's a big focus of the department. Now that we're not in kind of the crisis mode of we need to fill the seats with people who are able and willing, we're able to make sure that we can reach out to the community and get hopefully also more local. We don't have that stat on here, but of course the goal here is to hire locally as well.
Back to recruitment. We've had, over the years, you mentioned 218, 219, some of our lowest numbers. Being at 248, that's a lot more staff, and I know there's been recent contract negotiations where, every city has had to dig in and to get the type of people and type of people on the force. Has this impacted the city's budget at all? And is this something that the city's going to have to look at going forward?
Yes. So, of course it impacts the city's budget in the sense of in the years where we were, very short-staffed and we knew we weren't going to be getting close to where we wanted to be, we did at that time, just as a matter of being pragmatic, we reduced the number of officers in the budget because we knew we weren't going to get anywhere close to where we wanted to be. So during that time, of course, that reduces the amount of budgeted officers in the budget. And, each officer is roughly $100,000 a year. So when you're talking 20 officers, if that's the number we want to use here, that's roughly $2 million in the annual budget. And so, of course, we've got to make that work. And now that we're fully staffed, we've got to figure out exactly how to make room for that. But of course, public safety, I can tell you, if you talk to residents, if you go door to door talking to residents, it's the top issue. And so we're going to figure out a way to make sure that we can continue. And I would like to try to find ways to increase it further still from the 252 number that we have for next year. If we are able to achieve that, we can do things like expand potentially the community resource officer if that's a successful model, but also the strategic focus unit that really goes after the groups that are generating and raising the most havoc in our neighborhoods. So this is something, because it's the top priority of our residents and myself, we're going to figure out a way to get this done.
Chief.
One comment I would like to say on that first before we go to the next question is, we keep hearing that with the increased staffing that you're seeing, and I don't view it that way myself in my 25 years and the chief's 35. We've always been in the low 240s to low 260s. And so we're just getting back to where we need to be to provide proper public safety. So in my eyes, it's not, we've increased staffing, now what are we doing with it? We're backfilling. We're doing the things that we were doing previous to COVID.
Chief, obviously, the progress is great. What, if you had to pinpoint, I know the real-time crime center is huge, and I know that's part of it. What do you attribute some of this progress to? I know that you talked about staffing, the real-time crime center. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, again, I think it's the sheer desire and determination of the officers and detectives from the police perspective that are going out and you know, they're doing things on behalf of our community and for our community. That's literally what we took the oath for, and they are doing those things. So there has been some DNA change here. I will tell you that. It's not been an easy process. It has not been a quick process. It's been the last several years of committing to gun violence being our number one priority. So I'm not going to bash anybody, but we have about an 11-year average tenure in our police department right now. So it's not a matter of buy-in, it's a matter of reality where the officers realize what that oath truly means and are doing the things that they should be doing on behalf of the community, again, behalf and for them. So they're out there making the most of the call that they're on. So the most important call you ever be on is the one you're on. They are taking that to heart. That does have some strain, that does have some emotional toll. We totally understand that. But again, why are we doing what we're doing? And I think that's what's showing my opinion, that's what's showing the dividends. I can't speak on behalf of everyone else, but you know, when you put your heart into something, you know, usually that prevails.
And the support of the community, like we said before, getting the support of the community. Our officers are human beings, and if they don't feel the support of the community, it's harder. It's a hard job. And you know, they may not bring the same, you know, they may not be able to bring the same level of performance because they're not getting the cooperation from community members. They're being impeded by the community that's not, you know, seeing them as a help. They're seeing them as a hindrance. And so we still have work to do. We're not saying mission accomplished by any stretch of the imagination, but continuing to do all of these things, build relationships and trust with the community, and continue to focus on policing as well.
Yeah, and on a last note, something that Dan and the mayor both said. So, again, going back to the council budget hearing last night, the FBI, DOJ, we're right at the numbers that they recommend that the police department should be at. 60% of our time in patrol is spent responding to calls. We should be at 252 by their math and by reality. I know some other agencies are a little bit different. Chicago is a lot higher than we are. Baltimore, Philadelphia, they're a lot higher. But when you look at the number of officers we have, in the past, we had all these things that the police department thought, well, we should have this. But now we've relied on community to tell us what they think we should have. So when it comes to updating and modern technology, we incorporated that. When it comes to the policies, letting our community have the input because it affects them ultimately, no matter what happens, letting them have the input on policies. And even up to the point of what kind of vehicles should we have. All that input is now incorporated into our department to make those determinations of how many we should have and what we should be doing with them.
Look at the gun violence breakdown, and it looks like there's decreases all across the board. Are any gun crimes per se up? Are there any increases on there, or just for gun crimes?
I remember in the first quarter, the chief reading off to the Board of Public Safety, we saw a spree of robberies to persons and to businesses, and that was up, I believe, in March or April, but I think for the year, all of those categories are down.
There were some, and those are associated with aggravated assaults too. So that doesn't necessarily mean a gun itself, but most of the time it does involve a firearm, and most of the time out of that involves persons who shouldn't be having a firearm.